Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm talking about my DC Fate accelerated role-playing game featuring player characters of Harley Quinn, Amazo, and Jumper, and this is part 3. So when we last left off, I was talking about Catwoman had just offered the player characters to take over one of her in-progress missions, something she was scheduled to do, which was to assist Deathstroke for one night to receive a large shipment for $400,000, right? So, it's pretty simple. Now, Catwoman was offering that to keep the Harley Quinn, Amazo, and Jumper from getting deeper involved with the Bat family, because they were headed to see Cyborg, who's actually a member of the Justice League, and they were going there with Nightwing and Batgirl. So the player characters decided to turn Catwoman down. They didn't even accept that offer, and they went to have Amazo repaired by Cyborg. They go to Star Labs, where Cyborg has a very extensive space with a lot of equipment, and Cyborg begins fixing Amazo. It's about a 2-hour wait for everybody else, and during that time, the other two characters, Harley Quinn and Jumper, are waiting, and they actually just kind of a little bit wander around the lab, and they realize that Cyborg is currently working on 3 mysteries for the Batman. And those 3 mysteries are, the first, they actually see that there's a lot of information about portals that have been essentially sparking up at different places at random locations on the Earth. And when you can see through those portals, what appears to be there is clearly another universe that is populated by an entirely different set of heroes. So they see images of a man who's dressed on the other side of these portals, on the material like photos, video, material like that Cyborg is currently working on. They see photos of a man who is dressed in red, white, and blue, who is holding a shield with a star on it. They see other images of a person who is dressed in red and blue with a spider design near the center of their costume, who is swinging on a web. They see a large green creature who seems to have immense amounts of strength, and also seems to be fueled by rage. So all of those things, right? That's one mystery that Cyborg is currently collecting data on and trying to deliver a solution, or actually trying to deliver several answers to Batman. One, to determine how and when how these portals are being generated, who is generating them, why they are being generated, is there a way to know where the next one will open? All of those questions Cyborg is trying to answer for the Batman. The second mystery that so the second mystery that Cyborg is working on for the Batman is a mystery. And what I mean by that is there's another area back in the lab where there's an entirely additional set of tables, there's additional screens, but all of it is blocked by some other things within the lab, and the characters realize there is another mystery that he's working on, but they're not sure what. And then the last mystery, the third mystery, is a large shipment, actually multiple shipments of high-tech weaponry, fully automated laser rifles, exactly the same type that were being used by Penguin, have been being stolen all over the world at various docks. And there are like essentially highly trained mercenaries, much like what we're dealing with Penguin, that are being employed to steal these weapons. Okay, so at this point, Cyborg gets done with Amazo. Amazo is fully healed, and at that point, Jumper actually does a really good job of kind of suppressing his fandom, and he actually and one of the things that they realized was the only clue that the Justice League Cyborg currently has for the third mystery, the mystery of the stolen of the multiple shipments of high-end military equipment, is at one of the shipments was stolen right there in Gotham, and that shipment had at that site where essentially 100 fully automated laser rifles, as well as 10 specific launched missiles, which are very expensive and very dangerous, were stolen. And when the Justice League had some, actually, Justice League was working with the Gotham Police Department, and got much of the material back from them on what was going on. And essentially, they got a skateboard that was cracked in half, and that skateboard that was cracked in half had a blue rose design on the skateboard. Okay, so it's actually the only clue that the Justice League currently has that seems to be needing to be followed up, that hasn't already been eliminated as a source for who has been doing these robberies, right? So, with that said, the Justice League, or actually the three heroes, Harley Quinn, Amazo, and Jumper. Harley Quinn strikes up a conversation with Cyborg and says, "Hey, we can help you with that because, that skateboard. I don't know a lot of, I don't know all the skateboarders in the city, but I certainly know some, and I certainly know someone who might know something about a blue rose." And so Harley essentially kind of volunteers Amazo and Jumper and herself to assist with this specific mystery. And so they take the skateboard, and Harley says the person we're going to go see is Poison Ivy, right? Which totally makes sense. Poison Ivy certainly would be a good source to start for this. So at that point, Harley and Amazo and Jumper get into Harley's Camaro, her black and red Jester-themed Camaro, and they start hauling through the city to go to see Poison Ivy. Well, about halfway there, I ask for a perception roll, and Harley Quinn's character fails that perception roll, but Jumper makes the perception roll, and I think Amazo did too. And so what ends up happening is, in the middle of a very fast turn around a wide corner in Gotham, there is a sheet of black ice that is immediately put underneath Harley Quinn's car. So at this point, Harley Quinn's car spins out of control and gets T-boned right on the corner of one of the streets of Gotham on this stone building. Well, that Camaro, flips over and over and over. And at this point, the way that Harley, Amazo, and Jumper escape is Jumper simply teleports them to the sidewalk, right? So, actually, Jumper teleported himself, and I think Amazo and Harley both made their rolls essentially to exit the car safely, right? So at this point, they actually do their thing, and they're able to escape the car. The car is smashed into bits on the street corner, right? It's literally smashed across the corner of the building. There's an explosion, but then all of the heroes are ready. So can anybody guess who's attacking them? And sure enough, it's one of Batman's favorite villains, Mr. Freeze. So Mr. Freeze comes out. He's got his freeze gun, and he's got 12 minions with him, right? Actually, I'm sorry, it might have been a force of about 8. And so immediately they attack them. Combat ensues. Jumper, and so what ends up happening is Jumper is able to take out several of the minions, and he uses his utility belt, and actually uses, I believe, I have to think back. I'll have to talk to Bill on how he actually took out those heroes, because one of the things that was interesting about Jumper is he has incredible maneuverability, and he has very little combat skills. Nor does Harley Quinn. And so Harley Quinn primarily uses her revolvers, those 357 Magnum revolvers. So she's actually able to take out several of the minions, and at that point, what ends up happening is Amazo goes in for close combat on Mr. Freeze himself, and begins literally, banging it out with Mr. Freeze. I remember now, Bill, one of the things he did do was that he used a gadget from his utility belt, and he actually disabled Mr. Freeze's freeze gun. Now, once Amazo goes in and starts pounding on Mr. Freeze, he finds Mr. Freeze has a very extensive armor system, and he also has a lot of cold systems that are still within his suit. And so what Mr. Freeze does is he actually freezes Amazo in place, because Amazo's adjacent to him, and he's pounding on him, and he just puts out a huge block of about 6 foot of ice, and then Amazo is trapped, right? Now, me as the game master, I'm like, well, guess what? Amazo, now you're gonna die because you're gonna asphyxiate, or you'll at least be knocked out, and then Mr. Freeze, he can drop that that block of ice whenever he wants, and escape or do whatever he needs. But then I had forgotten Amazo is an android, and he doesn't need to breathe, which the players promptly told me, right? So what they ended up doing was that Harley and Jumper got into position, and they began chipping away at the ice after they had already taken out the rest of Mr. Freeze's minions. And as soon as and what they did was they chipped through the ice, and they disabled Mr. Freeze's suit. So at this point, his freeze gun is disabled, his suit is disabled, and he is neutralized. Okay. So at this point, Harley and Amazo and Jumper take Mr. Freeze into custody, and at the same time, simultaneously, they actually solve the mystery in the following way, in that Mr. Freeze is aware of what's happening. Mr. Freeze is taken back to Star Labs, and he's actually put into a freezing stasis pod, right? Well, Cyborg has so much going on dealing with the Justice League that once he's away from the pod, the player characters actually turned down the system and started to warm Mr. Freeze up. And they use this almost like waterboarding, like a low-end torture, and they're able to get Mr. Freeze to tell them what's happening or what's going on with the shipments, because Mr. Freeze, his goons were equipped with the same weapons that they were all looking for. And so they find, and so Mr. Freeze tells them essentially what is going on with these shipments. And so what Mr. Freeze explains is that the buyer is Gorilla Grodd, right? So Gorilla Grodd has been orchestrating these buys all over the world. He's bought 6 different shipments, and all of the shipments are being purchased for the same person. Excuse me. And this person is Tanyar. And Tanyar, he explains, is a brand new leader in Themyscira, the island where Wonder Woman comes from. So Wonder Woman has not been back to Themyscira for over 10 years. She's been fully involved with the Justice League, and it really has become her new world. And Earth is, essentially Gotham and Metropolis, and all the drama of the Justice League has really replaced Themyscira for Wonder Woman. She hasn't been back there in a long time. Well, Tanyar is an extremely strong Amazon who's risen up, taken over Themyscira, and taken prisoner all of Wonder Woman's significant allies on Themyscira. And what she has convinced the entire Themyscira Amazon population to do is to expand their borders and to gain new land, and they're starting with Los Angeles. So in 48 hours, Los Angeles will be attacked by a large army of Amazons, right? Also facilitated by also in conjunction with soldiers who will be equipped and supplied by Gorilla Grodd, right? So it immediately. Harley, Amazo, and Jumper explain this situation to Cyborg, and then Cyborg brings back Batgirl and Nightwing. They all discuss it, and there's an acknowledgement that Harley has really been doing the work of a superhero rather than a villain. And at that point, Cyborg and Nightwing and Jumper Cyborg, Nightwing, and Batgirl all essentially invite the three heroes to aid them in repulsing this assault that is planned 48 hours from now. And actually that was the end of the game. And so that was a wrap on the session. It was a really great session. I really had a great time playing with my friends Bill, Ted, and John. It was really nice too because I was on vacation, and this when I said, hey, I want to run this one shot, which essentially this December session, because we don't run this at a regular frequency, run it kind of at a irregular frequency. All my friends just came together really quickly, and it was actually this small group, and it was also very nice that it was kind of a small group. We were able to kind of get more granular, and everybody was able to have a lot of playtime. It was a really great session. I really enjoyed it a lot, and it was just an excellent session that I really enjoyed playing. And I highly recommend Fate, specifically for one, I think you can run almost anything with Fate. It really lends itself well. The only thing it really doesn't do is really super gritty, tactical, like combat, super high intense. If you have people who like a lot of crunch in their combat, Fate might not be their favorite game, but I actually think you can actually get them to understand it and enjoy it. But there's a lot of play value in the Fate accelerated system. And the other thing is, if you combine it with an existing world, if you combine it with Harry Potter or DC Comics or Marvel Comics or Star Wars or Star Trek, it can be really incredible, because you can take all these resources that are out there and really just very quickly turn them into aspects and make them into really valuable resources for the game. So that is the story of Tanyar Discovered, the December 2016 DC Comics Fate Accelerated Role-Playing Game. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to these videos and listening to essentially what is a play report for that game, and really had a great time, and I've really enjoyed it even more, just kind of recapping the story. Take care, everybody.